The grief is being separated from your essential state of well-being, right? It's like something has angered me. Well, really, what's angered me is that I've been separated from what feels good.
Hey guys, welcome to our SoulFam Podcast, where I interview space holders from all over the world. I am your host. My name is Karolina, and I'm the Connection Catalyst. I help spiritual entrepreneurs experience deeper connection with themselves, with others, and with the universe. Today on the show, we have Oceane, the spiritual mentor. Welcome to the show, Oceane. How are you doing?
Hello, thank you so much for having me, Carolina. I'm actually doing really good today. I am still in Costa Rica and it's beautiful. I have my friends with me. I feel fantastic. How are you feeling today?
Amazing. That sounds great. I would love to be in Costa Rica as well. Although I love Madeira, where I'm at as well. I don't complain. But time of our lives, we should
Mm,
say, right now. So it's really, really cool for me to talk to you because we resonate so much with us at first about your spiritual journey, a little bit about is anger, and you're working with women
yes.
a lot. And so, how did you get to do what you're doing now? What was the spark that
Mm,
that created this fire of healing and of being a coach that you are right
that's such
now?
a great question. And I love that you followed the metaphor of fire and anger. And yes, I love that. So I think for me, it really started with being raised in a religious environment. Like I was always exposed to more spiritual practices, but within the kind of mind frame of religion, very structured. And I had a huge kind of like push back against it. I didn't feel like it resonated with me. I felt really out of place. I was around the idea of God or spirit for a long time, but I really rejected the idea of the man in the sky, and that kind of laid down the groundwork for what I do now. Um, when my parents separated a few years ago, after like 40 years of marriage, I was really, as an only child, I was really sucked in the middle of it, and I allowed myself to be sucked in the middle. And there's a lot of distress and resentment and anger that got, sort of ignited within me. I felt a lot of responsibility. I felt very distraught. I felt like I was responsible for what was happening, for fixing it. And that led to a lot of physical and existential unrest, illnesses and just physical. I mean, we can get in details about it later, but a lot of very symbolic things would happen to my body, and I felt very lost. The idea of what a life should look like just got completely destroyed, and I got kind of sent on this path of self-discovery and the idea of accountability, like taking accountability for your own actions and not letting your own anger be directed towards others or yourself, but really harnessing that power and turning it into something beautiful, into something that is a life force that can push you forward. And it's been a wonderful journey ever since. I worked a lot on myself, and it came very naturally that the work I was doing on myself became play. It didn't feel like work anymore. It felt like play, and it got sort of channeled into playing with others and helping others sort of overcome whatever was draining them or weighing them down. And now I have my own practice, my own soulful, holistic, spiritual counseling practice where I help women with anger, with grief, because really when we talk about anger, we talk about grief. And for a lot of other things as well. Like anger is one aspect of it. It's the repressed emotion that we feel the most as the good girls. But there's so many other things that we're so complex as women. There's a lot of unearthed emotions and complexes that we kind of need to unravel and expose to the light to really become women and not stay in girlhood. So that's kind of how I got to do this.
That's beautiful. And yeah, I totally resonate with this kind of good girl syndrome where you cannot get angry, you cannot shout, you cannot scream. Good girls do not get angry and all these things. But then it causes us to suppress all of this even more. And then if we don't have healthy outlets for it, and we do not, because no one really knows how to do this in our society, then we're getting more adult, and we're like we are like 20 something years old or 30 years old, and like, what the hell, why do I get so pissed about little things, right? Because we haven't processed all of that before. So yeah, it's so important to work on this. So I'm really grateful that there are people like you who are working with anger, because I feel like it's actually quite a scary emotion for some people to work with,
Mm.
because it's a very active emotion. It's something that yeah, it gives you the drive to act and to change, and you can channel it in a healthy way where you're like, okay, I get angry, so now I'm going to change something in my life for the better. But you also, it can be quite destructive if you don't know how to manage it well, right?
Yes,
And
it's
so
exactly
i would
that. It's
I would
exactly
really
that. And
ask you to yeah. So I would really like to ask you, what are your anger management tools for people who maybe still struggle with it? They don't know what to do when they get
yeah,
angry.
there's so many, and I think everything stems from the fact that we label it as a bad emotion, right? Like if we really understand why we repress it, we can find so many healthy ways to release it. And the main one of the amazing quotes that I hang on to from Mama Gina in her book Pussy is the antidote to anger is first shared grief, then shared pleasure. And that idea that anger is rooted in grief, and because very much, anger is a secondary emotion, the primary emotion is grief, and to transmute that grief into pleasure and sharing it, being witnessed in it by other women primarily, but also by other men, is very, very healing. And for me, the way I see it and the way the chakra system sees it as well, you'll understand because you know that the anger is rooted in the sacral chakra, right? It's the pleasure center, it's the desires. So getting back in touch with that area of our bodies, that energetic center, and really reactivating it, seeing what's there and releasing any trapped energy to access what's underneath, which is pleasure, creativity. That's amazing.
So I would love to share also the tools that I'm using for managing anger. And I think that I already maybe told you in the past, where I got pissed off at my ex partner, I would always go to the forest and shout at the trees. And then I felt sorry for the trees because they were like, not guilty of anything, but they were getting my anger on them, expressed on them. But I think it's a good thing to really be with these feelings and feel them deeply, and then really find the outlet. And for me, in the past, also when I was a teenager, when I played the drums, it was a good way to do this, like in the music, when I played with a lot of anger, or I listened to heavy metal or things like that, I was really able to step into it and actually release it. And I didn't know at the time how it's helping me, that playing music is helping me. But I feel like there is so many different ways that people can express this anger and not let this emotion just yeah drive them. Like
Mm,
we are in the driver's seat of our feelings, so we can really direct this energy wherever we want. And so yeah, thank you for sharing that. And do you
that's
have any
beautiful.
other methods that you would like to share for navigating the anger?
Yeah, absolutely. That's such a beautiful way of putting it as well. Like it's a fire. It's a force that you can use for good, right? Like something that you said about it being able to create but also destroy is a huge concept, especially for women, because we are very good at destroying things, but we're also extremely good at creating life, right? There's that kind of dark feminine that destroys things that need to be destroyed. And that's kind of the pitfall with anger. We kind of see it as like something that overcomes us and we just rage, which can be positive in a lot of situations, right? Like I mentioned Mama Gina just now, I'll mention her again. She talks about swamping, which is really embodying fully and amplifying an emotion that you're feeling to let it take over in the healthiest way possible. So if you mentioned screaming at the trees, just taking a pillow and just hitting it over and over, just letting it out as much as you need until you alchemize that emotion into something else, whatever it is for you. Chances are it's probably going to be grief, as I said, because anger is a secondary emotion, grief lies beneath. And a great thing to remember is that any emotions are just information about you and about the values that you hold. And the reason why grief is that, it lies beneath anger is The grief is being separated from your essential state of well-being, right? It's like something has angered me. Well, really, what's angered me is that I've been separated from what feels good. Maybe my boundaries have been crossed. That's what I value. I value certain boundaries. And that's giving you information for you to act on. And that would be the next step after releasing and embodying the emotion, is to recognize that you're the actor of your own life, and you have the tools and you have the information to make the changes that you need to make. Your emotions are there to point you in the direction of what doesn't feel good or feels good. And you then have to recognize the changes and the adjustments that you need to make. So to answer your question, the tools is the embodiment practices, is the recognition that no emotions is good or bad. They're just there to give you information about yourself, about things that you might not have recognized before, and to find the tools or the resources to make the adjustments and the changes to really value your own ideals. And that's huge for women as well, because we're very much, as you said, overcome by our emotions, and we're being told that we're not the main actors of our lives and that we have to rely on other, protagonists or other authority figures to make decisions for us. But with anger specifically, it really shows you what you care about most and re-empowers you with the ability to make the changes you need to rejoin yourself with that state of well-being. So that's kind of what I would say about that.
Thank you so much for sharing this. And I agree that anger is always a cover emotion for other emotions, because every time I do the inner child work and I do processes and going to childhood traumas with my clients, pretty much every time anger is not really the original trauma. The original trauma might be powerlessness or might be extreme fear or something else that is beneath. And yeah, I heard Tilson saying that anger is kind of like a ice on the frozen
Mm-hmm.
lake. It's just like one layer, but what's actually beneath is way deeper and way bigger
Yep.
than just this part that we are trying, because this is just a protector part, right? This is just a part of us that gets angry to try to take us away from these deep vulnerable feelings that we feel, because at least anger is like a higher vibrational emotion than guilt or fear or powerlessness. So then in order for us to feel safer, we create this anger inside so that we can move forward, so that we can do something else, and yeah, just not be so miserable and vulnerable as inner child. So I think it's really important to know that, because yeah, it's not really about the anger, it's about the sensitivity that is beneath that we need to really look at if we want to resolve the whole anger. Because I feel like if we don't resolve that deep emotion beneath, then the anger might come back as well. And as you beautifully said, I also believe that anger is about like our boundaries and how we present ourselves in the world, and it's actually helping us discover who we are. As you said, I really resonate with that, because without anger, like how would we know where our world or our conditions end and where the other begins? It's like we
Absolutely.
need to have some kind of, as an individual, of course, from this human perspective, we need to have some kind of boundary and definition of who we are and how we want to express ourselves. So yeah, thank you for saying all that, because I think it's really helpful for anyone who doesn't know how to deal with anger. It's a really good topic to talk about, because I think it's so important, because I feel like everyone has suppressed anger. There's no person that doesn't, I think.
Mm.
And so it's really a valuable conversation to have about how to unlock it and what to do to actually get there. Because I remember in the past, before I started doing the emotional work, I was I don't know, I felt like I'm not getting angry. And there are so many people that are like, oh, I'm never angry. I'm like,
Mm.
yes, you are, just subconsciously.
Yes,
Or maybe you're just expressing it passive aggressively, right?
exactly.
But you do have anger for
Yeah.
sure. So what would you say to these people who are like, oh, I never get angry? Like, because I know a lot of people
Oh,
like
yes,
that.
they're the angriest. They are so angry, right? They're so angry, they've labeled it so negatively that they don't even allow themselves to see it and to recognize it. What would I say to them? Well, first of all, that it's okay to have a human emotion. It doesn't make them bad. It doesn't make them wrong. It doesn't make them flawed. And also to maybe notice their emotions more. It doesn't have to be about anger if that's too scary at first. to just practice some emotional awareness, right? It doesn't have to be emotional wisdom straight away. Like this, there's a journey to get there. And I would also ask them to maybe have a look at their emotional history and the labels that have been put on certain emotions along the way. Something that I do with some clients that I did in a workshop as well is, how did your parents manage anger when you were little, or any other emotions? Like, how were they processing their own emotions, and how were they viewing or making space for yours? Because, as you know, our personality is just a bunch of coping mechanisms that we've appropriated to survive and to receive love. Is like, okay, well, that doesn't get me love and support and safety, so we don't need that, but that does. Okay, well, I'll just be quiet, because if I speak when mummy is talking, then I'm going to get slapped across the face. So I'm just going to be quiet. That's not your personality. That's a survival trait. That's nothing else, right? That's what a personality is. So I would really just ask people to just consider that as a reality and really see how they've developed their character, and really maybe practice some detachment from it and see who they are beneath. And it's a big undertaking. It's big to be able to do that and have that detachment, but it's so valuable. And seeing that actually, yes, there might be some anger, and that's okay, and just seeing it there. Um, and that's just part of you, that's not all of you. I know you're familiar with parts work as well. Just seeing it as just an area in your body. I like seeing it visually as well. It's like, there's a bit of anger in my shoulder today, there's a bit of grief in my chest. That's fine. That's just, I'm just going to massage it out, I'm going to breathe into it. Like, it's not all of me. That These are the few things that I would say to people who don't even acknowledge anger, because chances are there's a lot of other emotions that they don't acknowledge either, and because it feels unfamiliar and it feels unsafe. So bringing back that safety, and walking down memory lane as well to see how they've developed to be who they are now. That's a good place to start, I think.
Mm, that's beautifully put. Thank you so much. And I love what you said. It's about seeing these emotions as like parts in your body, just like this is just emotion, which is energy in motion. It's not actually who you are. It's just the energy that is coming up for you because it was suppressed somewhere in childhood, but it's not ultimately who you are. Because I think that's what people are scared of, to be identified as, oh, I'm not an angry person, right? Or I'm not an angry bird.
Yes, right.
Or I'm just, yeah, I'm not this kind of person, I'm not that kind of person. But if we can realize that we are all everything, because there is no person who would never feel angry, or there's no person who would never feel sad. Like, we are all everything. And if we can get more accepting of our emotions and how they are, then life becomes way easier, because we're not resisting the parts of us that are still us, that feel all these different things and feel angry and feel sad and feel grief and whatever it is. And on the note of grief, I actually would love to talk about the grieving process, because as we were speaking before, we are in a very similar life situation right now, when we recently, a few months ago, broke up with our partners, and we are still in the letting go process and the grieving process of that. And so I would love to talk a little bit about that, because I know that both me and you, we handle it quite well. When it comes to the breakups that I've seen, we handle these breakups quite well. And so I wanted to ask, what is your advice for people who struggle, who just maybe had their heart broken and they broke up with their partner? Like, what should they do to make this transition as smooth as possible?
That's a big question. That's a very, very big question. And I definitely went through the stages of grief as we know them. And one thing that you've said there really stuck with me, and I'm going to bounce off that, is the word should. No one should do anything, right? I'm not there to tell someone what they should do. I don't know what I should do. I don't think I should do anything. It's very hard to go through a grieving
True,
process.
true. I
It's
agree.
very, very hard. I don't have any words of wisdom rather than take your time. Take your time and allow yourself to do things or be things that you don't necessarily agree with on a logical, reasonable, rational level. To give you an example, I I was sick as well in January. I think January was a horrible month for everyone. No, maybe not everyone, but for a lot of people, energetically as well and astrologically, it was a shit month. And I had this pressure that I put on myself to be very embodied and be very spiritual and just handle it well. But instead, I was sick and I was in bed and was watching 8 hours of Netflix a day because I had no strength to do anything else. And I sat down with my therapist and we unpacked it. And I said, I feel like I'm going back to old patterns of binging, consuming content, being lethargic. And we kind of went down that path for a little bit. And then we realized you're sick and you're going through a breakup. You're human. It's okay. You don't have to overanalyze everything you're doing. Just reparent yourself. If that's where you need to be, just in bed for 8 hours a day watching Netflix, that's a form of self-soothing. No one knows what you should be doing instead if that's what your body is needing. So take your time, be gentle with yourself. You're in a vulnerable position, you're tender, you're raw, you're suffering. That's fine. Just, if you revert back to the self-soothing practices that you had as a child, they might not be healthy on a reasonable, rational level. That's okay. Everything is temporary. You'll just need to let the cycles of life happen. If one stage of grief lasts a bit longer, if it comes back again months later, that's okay. Just don't lose sight of the fact that you are your own guardian in life. You're here to look after yourself. No one knows what that looks like for you apart from you. So just do that or don't do that. But, just observe yourself through it, hold yourself through it. But I don't know what you should do specifically. Just be kind to yourself. Be compassionate to yourself. That's the best piece of advice I can give from experience. I don't know if you had a similar kind of process as well, but from what I've seen, that's what will get you to connect back to yourself the fastest and the easiest. It's just to be compassionate and not expect it to look any kind of way.
Mm. Yeah, that's amazing. I really vibe with everything you said, and I also agree that no one should do anything. So thank you for pointing it out because
Pleasure.
I'm a little bit of a rebel inside, so I totally vibe with like no one should ever tell anyone else what to do.
Yeah.
So yeah, thank you for pointing that out. But I feel like I can recognize that this is exactly what I did. I was just letting my body feel how it feels. And of course, I also got COVID in January. So I also was like so emotional and so overwhelmed and so depressed for like a week. COVID was really just getting me depressed. It wasn't really hard on my body, it was hard on my mind, my emotional body, maybe. And but yeah, I just also gave my time to myself, and I just was maybe hanging out with friends if I needed some connection, maybe just being in bed and watching something if I needed some solitude or some, just yeah, presence or just meditating or whatever else my body wanted, I would do. But also I feel like I'm a big believer in healing through the wounds like that. And if we are going through the breakup, that's probably because some of the childhood traumas are trying to come up.
Yeah.
And for me it was obviously the abandonment wound. And I feel like it's so important to actually look deeper than what you're experiencing right now, because what you're experiencing now, it's also a reflection of what you've experienced in childhood. So if now someone broke your heart and you feel abandoned and you feel disconnected, then it's good to look into what was the first time, what is the original trauma of you feeling this, because it wouldn't be happening right now for you if it wasn't for the universe trying to heal something within you,
Yeah.
right? So you need to really get to, okay, what are my learnings from the situation? Like, how am I gonna handle this from now on? Like, was I too attached to this person? How can I provide for myself the things that they have provided for me? How can I feel whole within myself right now? Like, what did they give me that I felt like I could only get from them and not from myself? And when I and my partner, when we were doing the letting go ceremony, because the last day before we, or even the last day that we saw each other before we just went our separate ways, we went to the beach to do our letting go ceremony, and we really talked about okay, what did I get from you and what did you get from me, and from both perspectives to know, okay, so now you provided this for me, so how can I find the ways to provide this for myself, to then be more whole? Because if we are whole within, then this other person that we meet, the next partner that we attract, is going to be even more whole within as well. So then we can be two whole beings and attract each other, and maybe not totally whole, because sometimes obviously we have still traumas, we have still things to heal, but at least as much as we can. So I feel like treating the breaking up process and the breakup itself as a gift. And I know that it's not easy at the beginning to see it as a gift, because there's a lot of suffering and a lot of pain and a lot of emotions to go through. But really, when you look at it from the higher perspective and from the future perspective, then you can see, oh my God, like so many so many people I met in my life that were saying like, oh my God, I was crying so much after this guy or after this woman, and now I feel so happy that we broke up, because now in this relationship I'm way more fulfilled and it's way more aligned. So just seeing this breakup as something that maybe is going to bring you more alignment, more understanding about yourself and about how you want to be in your relationships and who you want to attract and where is alignment and misalignment. Because breakup doesn't have to be like super long and super painful. Of course, it is usually very painful, but I feel like if you can handle it well and if you can work with your emotions, I think it can be really smooth. Because, for example, for me, it was like literally every single day triggering myself with some pictures, with some videos of Ricky, and every day just crying how much I miss him, how much I love him, and everything. And, you know, I feel like after like 2 months of hardcore triggering myself every single day, then it's been 3.5 months now, and I'm still in the grieving process, sure, but I feel like it's not as hardcore. It's not just putting me straight to the ground where I cannot do anything else but grieve, right? So I feel like if you can really go there and get triggered and, you know, just be with yourself in these emotions, then you can get over it way faster. At least from my experience. Would you say that it's true for you as well?
It's interesting because I really recognize what you're saying, and that really that brings me back to a quote which I think is by Buddha, which is pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional, right? And I love that you twisted that on its head and you went straight for the suffering. It's like, no, I'm going to put myself through this. I am going to look at these pictures. I am going to go down memory lane and I am going to do some exposure therapy, basically. And I'm just going to, trigger myself over and over to the point where I can get more desensitized. For me, I think it was quite different because we had we had separated before and then came back together, so there was a grieving process that was already that had started, I think. Whether we were aware of it or not, I think there was another perspective that was open to us. And although it was sudden in a lot of ways, it also wasn't. So I think in our own ways, we had already started considering a life without the other person, or considering the option of going our own ways. So for me, what has been really important to remember through the grieving process, through the uncoupling, is that I am the focus of my own life. And as you very well put, what someone else can give me, I have to be able to give myself. And it doesn't have to look like hyper independence. That's not the goal. But it's the safety and the experience of I'm here for myself. I don't need someone else. I don't have to rely on someone else to get these things physically or emotionally or spiritually, right? Like I can do that for me. And I can bring more of that for myself to the point where, as you said, I am whole, I'm grounded, I'm centered, I am me. And if someone comes in my life, they're adding to it, but you know, there isn't a space that they're filling out of necessity. We can morph together to create something new, but I don't have to rely on someone, because that was my own personal wound that I had to overcome. And it's a huge initiation for women as well. Like, there's always the authority figure, there's always the other that will complete us, that will provide for us. And that's very much the maiden, the girlhood, kind of being disempowered and needing someone else. the woman doesn't need that. She's there. And if you want to come in her life, that's great. But she doesn't need you. She'll want you. You know, it's like that Cher interview when someone asks her, like, do you like men, or are men important? She's like, what for? Sure, they're important for something, but I like men like I like desserts. I don't need them, but they're great. So it's kind of like what I'm kind of seeing now on a deeper level. It's like, yes, men are great. Relationships are amazing, but nothing is going to fulfill me as much as I can fulfill myself. So that has been a huge element for me is, sure, I've lost someone, but I'm still here. And then that's the most important thing. I'm still here, and really grounding in that knowledge that you're never alone when you have yourself fully, and navigating that really helped me.
Mm. This is beautiful. Thank you for sharing. And I feel exactly the same way because I feel like because I'm coming from this abandonment trauma and abandonment wound background in a way, I feel like I need people in my life. But honestly, when I realize that I always have my soul and my guides to reach out to, and my guardian angel, and all these beautiful beings from other dimensions as well that I can rely on, I'm never alone really, because I feel like the biggest fear here is to be lonely, right? And to just the fear of loneliness. And when we first of all feel the loneliness and we are okay with that, that's first of all. But when we also realize that we are never actually lonely, because there are all these different beings and also people in our life. Sometimes we might, through the wound, not realize how many people are actually supporting us and how many people are there for us. But once we get through this feeling of loneliness, we can actually see clearly, like, oh, I'm actually not lonely. Actually, there's so many people around me, and I can always go and connect if I need that. And I can connect to Mother Earth, and I can connect to my soul, and I can connect to so many different ways, to so many different people or beings. So that's a beautiful lesson that we can get here. But another kind of inspiration that I would like to talk about here is the inspiration and invitation from me to look at your relationships, to everyone who listens, because in this episode we haven't mentioned yet that Oceane and her ex-partner broke up because me and my ex-partner decided to broke up, and we kind of inspired them to look at their relationship and see, oh, is there alignment, is there misalignment, like what should we change, should we be together or not. And it was actually very interesting because Oceane and both Oceane and Philip, they were really grateful to us for bringing it up and for inspiring them to look at their relationships. So I really would like to inspire everyone who listens to also do the same, to really see, like, am I actually very fulfilled in my relationship? Because if there is any incompatibility that we might just suppress and deny, and we don't want to look there, then there might be a misalignment, and we might be actually not 100% happy, and we want to have a 100% fulfilling relationship at any time, right, with everyone that we are. So I feel like I'm really honored and I'm really grateful for you and for Philip as well to follow the lead in a way or to just get inspired by us. And I honor your courage to actually take the steps, because it's not easy. And I know, because I'm the living example of how not easy it was to say goodbye to a really good relationship, right? Because your relationship was really good as well. But sometimes you need to aim for the best and not for just really good, I feel.
Yes. Oh my God, 100%. And I'm so grateful to you and Ricky for, because you both, to give a bit of context, you both shared what you were going through at a cacao ceremony that we all attended. And I was very amazed at the fact that you framed it in such a different way that I had never seen before when it comes to breakups. And you didn't say it was a breakup, you said it was an uncoupling. And that added a softness, and it was less dramatic than a breakup. Words hold so much meaning. Nothing breaks really, it's just a transition. And for me and my partner, which I think you had on the podcast a few weeks ago, for me and my partner, it was very much looking at where we were comfortable instead of thriving, and seeing how that's never a good enough reason to stay with someone just because you're comfortable. As we all know, the comfort zone is not a good place to linger in too long. It's great to be in for a while, but you need to expand. And if you're not able to expand with your partner, if there's no, and it's not to say it's their fault or your fault, but if you're not giving each other that drive, that push, or that opportunity to expand out of your comfort zone. So it really was inspiring to see you and your ex-partner share so much about what you were going through and the way you phrased it, which was very different from what I've ever heard before. Just for context, we met at a cacao ceremony where you asked for support through what you were going through, which I thought was very brave. And you didn't call it a breakup, you called it a uncoupling. And words have a lot of meaning, and I studied languages, I studied literature. Like, I really recognize the power of words, and not calling it a breakup because nothing is broken. It's just, you're transiting through something else. Calling it an uncoupling really resonated with me, and it added that softness that I needed to be able to envision that this could also happen in my life, that it didn't have to be dramatic, it didn't have to be big, it didn't have to be painful. It could just be something transforming into something else. And two people recognizing that actually they had done a beautiful journey together, but they were not helping each other thrive. And my big, theme in my relationship was comfort, as I said. And it's just realizing that it wasn't what I needed the most. I needed something that was going to push me forward and help me thrive. So it was really inspiring to see that, and it was really beautiful to see that it could be done in a very conscious way, as you said, sharing and letting go and reflecting back to each other what we loved about our relationship, what we benefited from it, and what didn't quite work, and bringing a lot of honesty to the process of letting each other go for their own good, and realizing that it was our own benefit to separate because we were not thriving together. We were just comfortable. And the comfort zone is great for some time, but it's very dangerous to linger in it for too long. It doesn't help you expand. So it took a lot of courage and a lot of, sort of sovereignty to realize it and to address it. But I'm very grateful that you opened the door for us to do so, and it's been wonderful. It's been a great, learning curve for the both of us, I'm sure. So thank you.
You're very welcome. I'm super honored that we had a chance to do this, me and Ricky. And something came to my mind as you were speaking about this belief that when you break up, then the relationship is not good. And it's like, no, the relationship could be amazing, but it doesn't
Yeah,
mean that you have to stay together if you feel misalignment, or if you feel like you're not fully compatible, or if you feel like you have other goals and priorities in life from now on, and you can always stay friends. And that's why I really like this term, conscious uncoupling. I mean, I think it's a little bit funny because in the spiritual community it's like, oh, we never broke up, we're just consciously uncoupling. But I think it's really on point, because you really don't break up, because me and Ricky still want to be friends, and we're probably going to be best friends for life. Maybe not right now, because we need this grieving time and separation for some time to really go our own ways. But I know that he's going to be my best friend for life, just because I value him so much. And I feel like our relationship, and every relationship that brings you growth, is a success. And I really feel like this is only the label that I think older generations brought to us, that, oh, if the relationship ends, then it's bad, or it's not good that the relationship ever ends, right? But it's, societal, religious as well, structures that are keeping us in this mindset, and it doesn't have to be like that at all. And so, yeah, I just wanted to bring it up, because for anyone who is like, oh, I cannot break up because what will people say, right? What will my family say if I will not be with this partner? Or what if I am married and I actually am not happy and I want to get divorced? Like, what will people say? How maybe they're going to judge me, or if maybe the priest is going to kick me out of a confession place.
yeah.
It happened to
Very
my mom, actually, which
fear-based.
was just, it's just freaking ridiculous. I mean, religion is about God, is about love, is about oneness, and then someone can kick you out just because you got divorced. Like, I don't know. For me, it's just not very very aligned. But maybe for some people it is. I don't know. But if you are in this position where you don't feel like you're happy in a relationship, I'm here to inspire you to look into, do you actually want to be comfortable there, or do you want to go outside of your comfort zone and find your real happiness, find your deeper fulfillment? And so, yeah, I just really wanted to bring it up because I think it's really valuable. And so, thank you for this and for sharing this. But I feel like on this note, some people might have troubles with letting go. So, what would you say to these people who really have a hard time of like detaching and, just, yeah, just letting all of this go? Because I had a hard time for sure to just leave it behind and leave the past in the past and just be
Mm.
excited for the new future. So, what are your tips for these people who cannot let go?
Yeah, well, that's such a good question because it's hard. Like I think we just need to recognize that it is hard, especially when it's letting go of another person. And before I share any tips, I think it's important to realize why it's hard. It's hard because you're not just letting go of a memory, you're letting go of a part of you, right? Like you were there. If you're letting go of a relationship, that's one thing. If you're letting go of a job, if you're letting go of, whatever it is, a piece of furniture, an object, that's still a representation of you and a part of you. And that's very hard to let go of you because what we've been talking about, up until now is fulfillment, is feeling whole. And it's very counterintuitive to let go of a part of yourself to feel whole. It feels like you're just taking bits of yourself apart and you're going to be less than, which is, it's not the case. You're just clearing room, you're making room for something else to grow. And maybe that reframe could be a good tip. It's, you're not taking parts of yourself away, you're not denying them, you're not, letting them die. You're just making room for more of you to grow. It's like, your hair needs to fall out before a new one can grow. Like your nails, you need to cut them. Like you need to clip your wings for new ones to grow. These are cycles of death and rebirth that we need to go through. Otherwise it gets too stale, everything gets too stagnant, and then we get calcified in the way we think, in the way we view the world, in our bodies can get, we need to stretch, we need to make room for our muscles to expand, for our, articulations, our joints to feel smoother. It's a very natural concepts of death and rebirth, and letting go of a part of yourself for a new, sprout to grow within you. That's a good way of looking at it, to really remove that aspect of pain and abandonment and grief. It's just, you're renewing your cells, you're renewing your emotional and spiritual cells. You're just making room for more of you. That's how I would look at it. That's how I'm trying to look at it as well, to make it a bit less painful.
Mm, that's a really wonderful perspective. Thank you so much for this because, yeah, it's like you're becoming more whole. And I really see how that plays out also in what I said before. Like you're going to the childhood, going through the trauma, and you regaining this part of you that was stuck in the trauma back to yourself. So actually, the breakup or the uncoupling for this matter could be a reason for you to recover all these different parts of you back to yourself. And also, I've done this kind of like a ceremony letting go where I cut the cords and I actually visualize that my heart is like a magnet, taking all the parts, all the emotions, all the things that I put in Ricky and stayed there back to myself. And it actually felt really good to feel more complete within myself. So this can be really a starting point for you to discover, ooh, okay, I had some parts of me somewhere and now I can bring them back and just feel more fulfilled and whole within. And I ultimately feel like every experience that we go through that is hard is gonna at some point bring us to a higher truth or more understanding of ourselves or bigger self-love or anything else. And it's pretty interesting because everyone who I speak to on this podcast had some kind of trauma or some kind of big thing happening in their life that made them want to help other people, want to be a coach, want to be a healer. And it's actually been a beautiful, as a blessing in disguise, as some people say. And I feel like this breaking up could also be a big, big blessing in disguise if you just allow everything to flow through you naturally rather than resisting anything you're feeling, or distracting yourself with going to the party, getting a drink, smoking weed, hanging out with friends constantly, or anything else that could be your coping mechanism for a breakup. So, yeah, thank you for this beautiful wisdom. And so, I would like to know, and for all the people who listen, where could they find you if they maybe would like to learn more how to manage their anger, or simply to see your content? And yeah, what's the best way to find you?
Thank you so much for that question. And thank you just for this whole conversation. It's always a pleasure to talk to you. I feel like we just pick it up where we left it. And it's like one long conversation that we have over time. So thank you for that. I really appreciate it. To answer your question, I'm only on Instagram. I don't really use any other platforms. I just canalize and focalize all my attention there. And it's I am Oceane Cohen on Instagram. I work with women. The kind of way I look at it is really to graduate from girlhood, from the maiden archetype to womanhood and be more embodied, be more responsible, accountable, own your pleasure, own your decisions, and kind of, let go of all that trauma that can be used as excuses, because we do have that tendency as well, and really just clean the slate and just move forward with feeling more whole and feeling more like an acting, performing, like force in your life where you can make productive choices from a good place. So I'm only on Instagram. It's I am Oceane Cohen, and yeah, just come, reach out, hang out, ask me a question if you have one, or just say hi. I'd be happy to connect with anyone who would like to.
Amazing. Thank you so, so much for your vibe and your beautiful wisdom flowing through you, and for your feminine and motherly energy. I really value it. And I just love you so much. And I'm, a little sad that we're not in the same country anymore, but it's good that we can connect even when we are on the other sides of the globe. So,
That's
yeah, thank
amazing.
you so much for being on the podcast. And I'm really looking forward to meeting you in person.
Yes, I can't wait to hug you again, and so glad that we met. And thank you for today. That was really wonderful.
Thank you so much, beautiful souls, for being with us today. And if there is anyone who listens to it and struggles with some emotions after breakup or anger, reach out to me or to Ocean, and I'm sure we're going to be able to help you. So, how you can find me is on Instagram. You can type The Connection Catalyst, or you can go to my website, www.connection-catalyst.com. So, yeah, thanks again, and stay tuned to the next episode.